What's going on YouTube? Teach back again with another video, and today I am reacting to Austin Gayle's latest 2-round NFL mock draft, and there are trades in here. Excited to talk about this video. Let's get into it. And now before we diagnose Austin Gayle's latest mock draft, hopefully you will enjoy today's video. If you do, hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. All that stuff helps me out a ton, and most importantly, this is just a catalyst for a conversation. Talk about your favorite team. Do you like the moves that Gayle gave them here in this mock draft? Do you like my analysis of that pick, etc., etc.? Do you like the trades? Anything we could talk about football related, down in the comment section. I am here for that talk. Let's jump right into it, and I say this with a lot of my mock draft reactions. I respect anybody who's willing to put their name next to this stuff and take the criticism that comes with it. So Aidan Hutch is in the first pick off the board. I don't hate that whatsoever. To me, him, Thibodeau, Neal, the Jags have so many holes, and those are three players that all make a ton of sense to me, so don't hate that whatsoever. And then Thibodeau there at 2. I don't mind that either. If the Lions are probably not going offensive line with Evan Neal, still available at this spot. So Thibodeau becomes the next biggest need. Potentially could go Kyle Hamilton in this spot, and I'm kind of intrigued by, Aaron Glenn, this former corner in the league. I think he's going to be suiting. He already had a head coaching interview with the Saints, I suppose, but I think next coaching carousel, he's going to start to become a name that people become really, really familiar with. And part of it's because he was a fantastic player. He did good work with the Saints, working with the DBs. And I wonder if that becomes a factor. And maybe this team says, hey, Jeff Okudah needs some help as the other boundary corner. Now, I do like Amani Uruwariye and Ifeatu Melifonwu, who they took last year in the 3rd round. Certainly a project that's worth, continuing to invest in. But maybe, DC Aaron Glenn is saying, hey, give me Derrick Stingley, and I can give you the next Marshall Lattimore. So I'm not really ruling out Stingley there at 2. But here for Gayle, he's got Thibodeau going 2. Don't hate that pick whatsoever. And then Ikem Ekwonu becomes the first tackle off the board. And this kind of becomes, a preference of flavor. You look at Charles Cross, and he moves so well laterally, right? Like his feet and pass protection, stellar. And he has great hand placement at that. So, you're looking for a pass protector, Stonewall on the left side, that's your guy. If you're looking for a road grader and someone who has the versatility to be able to kick inside, Ikem Ekwonu also could play right tackle. He did some of that at NC State. He becomes more of a chess piece, but also the focus more on the running game, and then try to polish up where he still needs to get better as a pass protector. And then Evan Neal's kind of your split the difference, but he's also an unbelievable athlete, which all three of those guys are. I'm obviously not moving anywhere near as good as they are, and I'm a fraction of the size. So I really can't go wrong with any of those 3 tackles. Again, that speaks to the strength that this tackle class has. On to 4, Derrick Stingley Jr. I know Jets fans are really not keen on this pick here. And I understand why Jets fans are really passionate about this upcoming offseason, and it's because it's a young team. You're having a head coach who's coming off their first year. You got to think Solid's going to be a better head coach in that respect. Mike LaFleur, first-time offensive coordinator, first-time calling plays. He's going into year 2. Got to think he will do a better job as well. And then obviously Zach Wilson, year 2. What do you do? Try to get the most out of him. All that to say, this team has so many different areas where they could be special, right? You have Carl Lawson coming back, so maybe at 4 you pair up Kayvon Thibodeau, and you have John Franklin Myers moving across the defensive line, and you become a team known for their pass rush. Or, beginning of the offseason, I think part of why Gayle was thinking, Stingley here at 4 and then potentially secondary at 10, we'll see, is because if you double up in the secondary, Saleh and that scheme in specific does a lot with a little. Now imagine what they could do with a lot. That's an interesting counterpoint. And then there's Jets fans who are saying go tackle it for Mekhi Becton Insurance, or even if he plays a stable, more than stable, high upside type of player on the right side, and then a wide receiver pass catcher at 10, and let's just go all in on Zach Wilson. I don't think there's a wrong path, and that's part of the fun about mock drafts, but that's also why I know Jets fans have their taste and the path they want to see their team take. And I know a lot of fans probably are not excited about Derrick Stingley Jr. at 4. I've heard a lot of feedback saying Jets fans don't want that, so I have pivoted in a different direction. I also think there's a lot of ways you can go in a different direction here. Corner is a spot where there is typically a fair amount of depth, especially in this class. I think you can wait, so maybe it makes more sense to get a blue chip tackle, or if one of the edge guys falls to you at 4, and then you could go corner at 4. Also like the idea of Kyle Hamilton at 4. Little sneak preview to my next 2-round mock draft. Then Evan Neal finally comes off the board at 5, and this would be dream come true if you're the New York Giants, right? I mean, this is potential tackle 1 falling to you, a guy who's played guard and right tackle, so he also opens up a ton of avenues in which he can play at. If you take Neal, you're probably playing him at right side. I don't like the idea of flipping Thomas after he has made 2 years worth of progress on the left side, so I think Neal would be a slam dunk here for the Giants. On to 6, Charles Cross. I won't stay on this one long. This one makes a ton of sense. It's looking like it's going to be Sam Darnold right now. I mean, barring, a Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson type of move that saves Matt Rule's job. This team has got to do something to improve the offensive line. And, even if it is Sam Darnold and that's not your long-term guy, put the offensive line in place. And then, if Rule keeps his job or it's a new regime coming in next year, then they can take a swing at the plate to try to land that franchise quarterback, and they'll have a competent left tackle to work with. Then the Giants go George Karlaftis. Karlaftis is a tough one. I'm getting ready for this next mock, and I haven't fallen down to 19. I look at him like, God, when you look at what he can do in short area burst situations and his bend, and I think he'll run a great 3-cone next week once we get to Indy. This is a guy who should go higher than 19, but he feels like a polarizing guy because he doesn't have the athletic measurables that a Thibodeau or Hutchinson will have, but he has his specialties. I think he'll put up great numbers on the bench, and again, I think the agility tests are going to be really solid for him. We'll see once we have the official numbers and we can see where he stacks up in this class, but I think he does make a ton of sense here for the Giants. Typically, I think of Karlaftis as a 4-3 end, but I think there's plenty of versatility and ability to have him learn to play in that 3-4 that Wink Martindale plays. Where it gets challenging is Karlaftis is probably not going to be an edge rusher that can drop into space, which is something Wink Martindale has really put on the forefront of his edge rushers. That's why Tyus Bowser was such a perfect fit for Martindale in Baltimore. I don't know if Karlaftis is that guy. Additionally, because that defensive change and Martindale wants to blitz middle linebackers, I think this is a really intriguing Nakobe Dean spot. It'd be higher than I would take Dean, but I think scheme fit wise, it'd be a slam dunk here. So just another thing to keep in mind there if you are the Giants. And that's another way to engineer some pass rush. Kyle Hamilton 8. This is a slam dunk if you're the Falcons. I like them going corner, edge, safety. Team with a lot of needs, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Can't really go wrong there at 8. Green Bay Packers. So this is a part of an Aaron Rodgers trade where he is going to Denver. I'm in the spot now where every day I seem to change my mind about it, but I'm starting to think Rodgers is back. Maybe they'll run it back one more time and then franchise tag Adams. I could see him wanting to get out though, but leaving the NFC doesn't feel like it's optimal from where he's at in his career, and going to the AFC and having to take on, a path that would include Burrow, Herbert, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, etc., etc. I think he might want to stay in the NFC, and his best bet at winning then might be Green Bay or maybe Washington or Tampa Bay if you want to just inherit the leftovers from Tom Brady basically. So it's kind of a tough spot. I don't know if we'll see this trade, but Denver also is the franchise with maybe the most to lose given the roster around them, and I could see them forfeiting up all the assets here that Gayle put in the deal. So with Green Bay on the clock at 9, I love the draft pick of Drake London. And this could also be a spot where with Rodgers leaving, I think Adams would still be franchise tagged, and I can see Austin Gayle does talk about it here in a little bit in the write-up, but if they tag Adams, pair London with them for Jordan Love, you're putting that quarterback in a spot to be able to at least get a good barometer. Is this our guy, or are we trying again next offseason? And that's really what you're looking for. You don't want this Love experiment to go on too long. So really like the pick there with London at 9. 10, Garrett Wilson, the Jets. Wilson feels a little, I'm not calling him Elijah Moore, but similar body builds and things you can do with him. So I'd prefer to see a Burks or a London off the board here just to get you a bigger catch radius and just a different player who wins in a different way. But that's it. They land Garrett Wilson, a true separator, to go with Elijah Moore, which is a lot of the same stuff I said about him last year with that downfield ability, explosive, take the top off the defense. That Moore brings, especially work from the slot, I'm all for that. And then you have Corey Davis as, that second, third guy that just kind of does whatever you need him to, move the sticks, and third down spot's probably his best strength compared to the other two. So don't hate that pick whatsoever, and trying to invest in Zach Wilson. That's ultimately the goal here, I think, for the New York Jets this offseason. And another trade. And Russell Wilson going to the Commanders, one, it's a name change, so I can see where this team is saying, hey, new identity, we need a name to go with it. And Russell Wilson makes a ton of sense. Also allows Russ to stay in the NFC, which, in this, realm that Gayle has created, Aaron Rodgers is no longer in the NFC. So Russell Wilson, one of, if not maybe the best quarterback in the NFC, if he can rekindle that magic from a couple years ago, or even just the first half of not this past season, but the season ago. then we're talking about something. And, he'd be throwing the ball to Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel. I think De'Ami Brown could be poised for a big, year 2 step forward if he's playing with Russ. Plus, the backfield, Antonio Gibson, a stud. The offensive line's solid. The defense has a ton of pieces to work with. So, totally like this idea. And I think Washington is one of those teams where this is what they should be trying to do. And then in turn for Seattle, you land Sam Howell. He's the first quarterback taken in this mock. I don't know if he's truly QB1, but he does walk that line. He's not quite as much of a project as Malik Willis, but he has those tools that maybe a Kenny Pickett doesn't have. So you kind of find that middle ground, and it allows Seattle to use Howell in a way where you feel comfortable playing him right now. And if it doesn't work out, then you're picking top 5 next year anyways. Or if it works out, he's got enough tools to where if it does line up, it'll pay dividends and you could have a franchise guy there. So I like that trade for both sides, honestly. Then we get to the Minnesota Vikings. Trent McDuffie, I think this is a solid fit here. Depends on what they end up doing with the defensive coordinator and what scheme they want to play. But, thinking about a traditional zone-heavy defense, this is a nice addition to that type of, way of playing on the defensive side. Edge could obviously be in play here. And, I don't know. They're shopping Kirk. They're talking about an extension. If there's no trade and no extension, I think Malik Willis makes a ton of sense here as a guy who sits for a year. You let Kirk Cousins play out the last year of his contract, let him walk next offseason, and then hand the reins over to Malik Willis. That could certainly be in play there. I'm interested. If you're a Vikings fan, let me know what you think they should do at 12. Chris Olavey off the board at 13. This is about as high as I see him going. And it's typically Garrett Wilson or Chris Olavey in this spot for a lot of people. One of those Ohio State guys. It's nice to keep the storyline, keep him around, blah, blah, blah. But this is also just a guy who can stretch the field, has consistent hands. The reason I would like Wilson a little bit more than Olave is I've seen Wilson win in the intermediate parts of the field. To me, I look at that wide receiver room, and if they keep Jarvis Landry or restructure that contract or whatever the case may be, that's a solid slot guy that wins underneath. And then you have Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's a big body guy, runs a good 40, very fast, wins down the field in a variety of ways, both with speed but also size. Inconsistent hands, however. I'd like to see them add a guy who can win in that 10 to 19 yard range. That's also where Baker Mayfield can be really stellar, given he does have a good arm. He can fit it in front of a safety trying to make a play on a wide out. But he also has really stellar accuracy. It's one of those things where you talk about the tools Baker has. He should be a lot better than he actually is. So getting him a guy who can eat up in the middle of the field. Think about what Stephon Diggs did for Josh Allen when he went to Buffalo. I think Garrett Wilson could do something similar. Not going to call him Stephon Diggs. I'm not calling Baker Mayfield Josh Allen, but the way that played out could be similar there in Ohio State, or in Cleveland. But that said, if they land the other Ohio State wide receiver, Chris Olave, I'm not complaining. They're addressing a need, and they're getting a damn good wide receiver in my eyes. Then for the Baltimore Ravens, Sauce Gardner, this would be a perfect fit. It allows you to move on from Marcus Peters if you do choose to do that. Has the size, man-to-man, cover 1, cover 3, background with Cincy, scheme fit to a T. Slam dunk, position of need, high value target. The Ravens really can't do much better. And Baltimore is in an interesting spot because they're kind of like the 49ers last year, where it's this team where 9 times out of 10 you're saying, okay, well, the 49ers are not going to be picking at 12 often, and the Ravens are not going to be picking at 14 very often. But because of that, this is a great opportunity for them to get some awesome value. The 49ers decided to move up, and a big part of the reason they could make that trade is because they were picking at 12 and not 29 or something thereabout, where their pick is at this year. The Ravens, it's like, okay, if they get Tyler Linderbaum at 14, sure, it's a center, but slam dunk. They get David Ojabo or one of these edges, George Karlaftis maybe at 14, slam dunk. They have a track record of getting a lot out of those edges right away. And if it's Sauce Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Derrick Stingley Jr. I've seen going to the Ravens in some mocks, slam dunk. So the Ravens really feel like they're in a spot where they really can't go wrong. They're in a sweet part of the draft where they'll get a high position, target of need, position of value, all of it lines up there at 14. And for a team that, that rookie could have a huge role carved out for themselves on a playoff team. So slam dunk really for all sides involved. And speaking of David Ojabo, he comes off the board to Philadelphia Eagles at 15. I think that's a pairing you'll see a ton of, that or Ojabo going to the Ravens at 14. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially with them now having their new DC coming from Michigan. I think that makes a ton of sense. But Ojabo, high position value, position in need, makes a ton of sense. Speaking with the Eagles, Andrew Booth Jr., especially with McDuffie off the board, I really like McDuffie in that Jonathan Gannon soft zone, a lot of too high looks. I think he would fit in perfect with a lot of cover 2, cover 4 looks. But, in this case, Booth Jr. gives you a lot of versatility. He can play in man, can play in zone, and also sets up as a nice heir apparent for the day Darius Slay decides to hang it up. Jameson Williams to the Chargers, this is one I really, really like. And I think when I initially did this in my 2-round mock, couple mocks ago, I believe. I got a lot of pushback saying, no, this has got to be Jordan Davis. This has got to be a linebacker. And I get that. But I think people are starting to see, okay, we can wait till round 2 to get a Chad Muma or Leo Chanel at the linebacker position. You can wait till round 2 to get a Travis Jones. And now that we're starting to learn more about those extra depth options that aren't named Jordan Davis and aren't Jameson Williams at the wide receiver position or aren't Nakobe Dean at the linebacker spot, once you start to learn more of those names and figure out, okay, this is their strengths, this is their weaknesses, and as a collective whole, as a draft community, we learn more, you start to see people push a little bit and say, okay, yeah, Jameson Williams, especially if they keep Mike Williams. Could you imagine this wide receiver room with Jameson Williams and Mike Williams on the outside with Keenan Allen moving full-time into the slot? Yeah, that is something I want to see, all while Justin Herbert's the guy throwing him the football. Yeah, that's something I want to see, no doubt about it. And hopefully with the addition of someone like Jameson Williams, that forces an OC like Joe Lombardi to say, hey, well, let's push the ball down the field a little bit more. Malik Willis to the Saints at 18. This is a spot where if you're the New Orleans Saints, you don't often get the chance at a guy who could be a no-doubt franchise quarterback if everything works out well. He also comes with a ton of risk. And for a team that's ready to win now, Willis isn't ready to play now. And that's where my concern of this match is at right now. I think a Desmond Ridder makes more sense. A Kenny Pickett could make more sense. Also with Pickett, he's playing in a dome, so the hand size isn't as big of a concern for you. He lives over the middle of the field, can dot you up underneath. That's Michael Thomas's game. I think Pickett or Ridder makes a ton of sense. Willis, though, if you're going to go for a home run, it's not often that the Saints at 18 would get a chance to do that. One, because they're not normally picking that high. Two, because quarterbacks don't normally fall this far in the draft. So I can't knock it there if that's their rationale for that type of pick. And then Devin Lloyd goes 19 to the Eagles. It's a position of need. And you're going to hear me talk about this in my mock, so I don't want to harp on it too much. When you have more than one first-round pick, I think with your second, or in this case, Philadelphia, the third, you give yourself the flexibility to go get a low-value position, right? So in this case, it's linebacker, right? Not something that makes as much money as an edge, a tackle, et cetera, corner, wide receiver, even more. Devin Lloyd here makes a ton of sense because they need to get better in this spot. TJ Edwards is a good player. He's not a great athlete, though. But he plays a position with a lot of football IQ, and he does produce and grade out pretty well on Pro Football Focus's, grading system, and overall he's a guy that most people like if they watch the Eagles a lot. Devin Lloyd gives you a ton of athleticism that they definitely need. Get Alex Singletary off the field. No disrespect to the man. But Lloyd gives you an abundance of athleticism and just another guy in that nickel set that you can trust having on the field that isn't a liability. Devin Lloyd can play in that zone-heavy scheme, which, look at the 49ers, and specifically under Robert Saleh. Fred Warner had a huge role and was such an integral partner, even before that, Bobby Wagner with Seattle. Those linebackers and zone-heavy defenses have a ton of work cut out for themselves, and Devin Lloyd makes the workload for TJ Edwards a little bit more manageable if you draft him here in the first round. So I think it's a slam-dunk pick, and because you have more than one first-rounder, you can afford to go with your second or third first-round pick to go with a lower position of value. Raiders go Desmond Ridder, and this is actually a trade with Pittsburgh, so this is Derek Carr going to the Steelers. I am a Pittsburgh fan, if you didn't know. I would love to see this. This is about as good as I think the Steelers can do. But also for Vegas, if Josh McDaniels decides, hey, I'd rather not pay Derek Carr $40 million, let's blow it up and start over, Ridder could be a guy that fits that system to a T, right? And think about what New England's been able to do with a little bit of mobility they had with Cam Newton 2 years ago and, sparingly this past year. But then also a guy who can be a high processor and make those throws underneath. That could be Desmond Ridder. His accuracy issues I've been pretty open about. I'm worried about his inaccuracies or inconsistencies as a thrower of the football. That said, he has a strong arm, has mobility, so he can open up the offense in a lot of different ways, both pushing the ball down the field, but also using his legs and making defense defend sideline to sideline. So I think this is a really solid place. If the Raiders did decide to move on from Carr, got a couple of firsts, then they could go ahead and get a potential QB in the future. So don't hate that at all if you are the Raiders. Javon Walker at 21 to the Pats. For me, New England it's wide receiver in round one or corner. Specifically, I like corner, potentially linebacker here. If they like a Devin Lloyd, if they think Nakobe Dean's a nice fit for that defense, they could go that route. But this is also a team that could move on from someone like a Kyle Van Noy. Just could use overall an edge one type of guy who can take over a game late. So don't hate that. Javon Walker is a bit of a project in the sense that he was moved around so much. I don't know if he ever really got to learn and become really special at one specific spot across the defensive line, but with that frame and playing for a coach like Bill Belichick, who has obviously a track record of getting the most out of players and developing them to a high degree, I would like to see what Walker could become. Treylon Burks then 22 to the Raiders, so their other first-round pick in this situation. You have Ridder, Burks. That's a really fun pairing. And also, given the inaccuracy issues and my concerns with the inconsistency of the accuracy of Ridder, Treylon Burks, big catch radius, huge hands, can win inside and outside from the slot and on the perimeter is what I mean to say there. That makes a ton of sense there for my and the Raiders going with Burks. Then you get the Cardinals going Tyler Linderbaum. This is a potential heir apparent to Rodney Hudson. Sorry, the name escaped me for a moment. But, Hudson missed a couple of games this year. I think that makes sense if Linderbaum is the pick there as, just in case plan. But also, I think Linderbaum, he's only 290. We'll see what he puts up on the bench to speak to his strength, but I think he'll put up some numbers there, and the strength concerns will subside for a lot of people. So I think there is potential and flexibility for him to move out to either guard spot as well. Kenyon Green to the Cowboys. I really do like this fit, and it's something that I probably should start to mock a little bit more. Whether you need him to play left guard, and I think in this spot, if everyone's healthy, that's where he, probably is lining up. But in the case Liao Collins gets hurt, Tyron Smith gets hurt, Zach Martin gets hurt, Kenyon Green is a band-aid for any of those situations and can fix any of those issues that could come to arise. It's a team that does rely heavily on their offensive line. It's a huge part of their identity, and it's also a unit that has been banged up a lot over the last couple of years. So Kenyon Green makes a ton of sense there. Then Jordan Davis, the Bills, is one that I've done in my mocks and I've talked about a ton. I think putting a, block-eating, run-stopping specialist next to Ed Oliver might be able to get a little bit more out of Ed Oliver. He's been a little bit of a disappointment for the Bills. This might be a way for him to be able to just focus on getting to the quarterback and getting the most out of that. Additionally, it's a team that plays a whole lot of too high. And just like we talked about with the Chargers and potentially taking Davis at 17, it makes a lot of sense there. If you're going to play Poyer and Hyde out of the box, have a guy that eats up a ton of those run blockers and makes it hard to run directly up the middle and forces teams to run to the boundaries, and hopefully that improves your run defense. And, for the Bills, it's just those, hey, how can we get a little bit better in certain areas where we had some weaknesses? There were some games where the Bills got gashed. Think about the Colts loss, right? Davis is one of those ways you can try to counter that. Jermaine Johnson, 26 to the Titans. I haven't seen this a whole lot. This is a potential Harold Landry replacement for sure. If Landry is not coming back, does not get an extension with the Titans, I think a linebacker makes sense here. Wide receivers, one you're starting to see a whole lot of. But, if they do have to replace Harold Landry, I think that should be the focus, especially considering the secondary played pretty well behind him. Now let's go ahead and maximize that value, and let's draft a guy in the first round who could potentially get even more than what we got out of Landry in a couple of years where he was a little quiet. Also, Bud Dupree, spent a lot of money on him. It wasn't all that great. He wasn't terrible per se, but wasn't worth, that 5 years, $80 million, at least not in year one. So maybe adding Johnson on the other side, making sure that it's not just Bud Dupree and, a bunch of league average guys at best on the other side. Make sure that you get as much out of Dupree as you possibly can. But we'll see what happens with this Harold Landry situation. Devonta Wyatt to the Bucs. I think this totally makes sense. This is one that I'll probably rip off here in my next mock. Ndamukong Suh is, starting to drop off as a player. Maybe he'd be better in a specialist role where he's only playing 400, 500 snaps a year, and he's basically, designated pass rusher, because I think he still provides some value there. But Wyatt, I think, seamless plug-and-play starter there. The only thing that's frustrating there, if you're a Bucs fan, is like, okay, well, what's the answer at quarterback? What are we doing at wide receiver? We have a bunch of guys who potentially could be free agents next year, especially if you tag Carlton Davis. Then it's Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Jamel Dean, all free agents next offseason. So corner could certainly be in play here as well at 27. So I could see Bucs fans saying, interior defender, who cares? We got bigger fish to fry. Packers, Nakobe Dean, this would be a stellar Devondre Campbell replacement, a guy you could just leave in that nickel, dime backer role, plays well in space. He's a little small, a little undersized when it comes to his weight and his height, but the grades and the stats speak for himself. Also, Dean was the guy, and part of my concern about, Channing Tindall and some of those other linebackers from Georgia is they're uber athletic, and they make plays, especially in the run and also in coverage. They do a lot right. But Nakobe Dean is the Mike. He's the guy calling plays, wearing the green dot, so to speak, at the college level. That's the guy that I would prioritize the most because of that. Now, I know people like Quay Walker, and there's people who think Channing Tindall's the best, but to me, it's pretty clearly Dean, especially considering he is that vocal leader and the mic of the bunch. So I think this is a stellar pick here for the Packers if Dean falls that far. Dolphins go Bernard Raymond. This is one you see a ton. We'll see. Raymond feels like he's starting to lose some of the buzz. He's also a little older, 25. So will a team like Miami saying, This guy is a little bit of a project. He's not necessarily a totally finished project, but he's also 25. So that's kind of a hard place to find yourself if you're, a potential first-round pick. But that said, the size, the mobility skills, and he graded out unbelievably at Central Michigan. I know the level of competition is not that of the SEC or the ACC, but it shows this guy can play at a high level to some degree. So I think it's worthwhile there for the Dolphins. Also, you have to just kind of weigh what other options are there. Kaiir Elam to the Chiefs. I think this is a stellar scheme fit. A guy who can play that man press style, big, tall frame, position in need. I think edge and wide receiver probably a little bit more of my focus for the Chiefs in my mocks, but I would not knock them if they took Kaiir Elam. I'm a huge Elam fan, so I'm glad to see he's still in the first round of some people's mocks because he is kind of a rare name to see going in the top 32 nowadays. Trevor Pennington to the Bengals. Think this makes sense, and especially on the right tackle position, you're going to lose Riley Reif on that one-year deal. Penning, mean streak, I like that fit a ton. And then Matt Corral, kind of interested to see him be the last pick of the first round. A lot of people are going quarterback here for the Lions at 32, but more often than not, it's prior to the Senior Bowl, it was Malik Willis. He'll fall because, he's a project. Or it's Sam Howell because of something similar, but to a lesser degree. Here it's Matt Corral, the guy who didn't go to the Senior Bowl, and a lot of people said he was the winner of the Senior Bowl because of that. But if he falls there to 32 with the Lions, I think that makes a ton of sense. And again, going back to what I was talking about the Eagles, and I'll talk about in my mock, I think if you have more than one first-round pick, you are incentivized to either do one of two things. Lower position value with your other pick, take a linebacker, take a center, take a safety with your second first rounder. And that's something I was saying about the Jets last year. With Wilson going 2 in my mocks, I was saying, hey, take a flyer on Farley. Sure, he might get hurt and he might not be anything that is truly worth a first round pick because of his injury concerns. But if you did your due diligence and Wilson works out, no one's going to remember that pick anyway. So similar here with the Lions. If in this case it's Kayvon Thibodeau, if he works out, great. No one will remember pick 32, especially, or even more so if it's a quarterback that flames out. And then, if it doesn't work out, you're picking top 5 again next year because the quarterback has that much dictation on how the game plays out. So I think quarterback at 32 makes plenty of sense for the Lions. Then we get to the second round. I'll go a little bit quicker here. I don't want this video to be too long. Brian Asamoah, I think it's a stellar pick. Miles Jack could be on the move for the Jags. This is a guy with a huge wingspan. Also great size. Moves really fluid. Really like him a ton coming out of Oklahoma. Jalen Petrie, this nickel, strong safety type. I think the Lions are missing that slot corner, especially after they moved on from Justin Coleman, who's now a free agent again. And, I think it makes sense for Miami to bring him back. Tangent aside, Petrie gives you something you don't have, but also just the presence to be a run stopper, and he was one of the biggest winners of the Senior Bowl, so I don't hate that pick at all. Texans go Jahan Dotson, and this could be interesting too, because think about what if Brandon Cooks is traded. I think Dotson could be someone who provides you not quite, Pro Bowl level type of production, 90 plus catches, 1,000-something yards, 6 tutties, I think, off the top of my head for Brandon Cooks. But Dotson gets you something pretty close and make an impact right away. Plus, wide receiver has been one of those positions where you look at and say, yeah, these guys can be a part of what we're trying to accomplish year one. And this top of the second round seems to be a sweet spot for wide receivers. T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, just to name a few over the past couple of seasons. Then we get to the Jets, Daxton Hill. Something that I talked about with Jalen Petrie. Technically, Pro Football Focus calls him a cornerback because that's where he lined up more for Michigan, but he's that nickel corner, overhang defender, strong safety type, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, just in a different body type of player. Jets don't have that. And, this could be one of those ways where you invest in the secondary, but it's closer to the box, and it might be a little bit easier for Jets fans to be won over and say, it's not just we're going outside corner to play cover 3 and, handle a third of the field, or it's not just a safety. It's a guy who will do a little bit of both, playing the nickel, where that's becoming a bigger part of passing attacks anyway, so it's good to have Hill in that spot. Hill and Petrie both have the ability to play in man coverage, and that was one of the biggest things that moved Petrie's stock up, is he proved, hey, one-on-ones, I can hold my own in man coverage, which makes him a legitimate nickel corner, just like Hill. Kingsley Enagbare, I think this would be a slam dunk pick here for the Giants, and what makes me a little concerned, just keep in mind they did go Karlaftis 7, and then you got Kingsley Enagbare here at 37. That feels like a little bit of an overlap, and two guys who really do not move all that well in space. I'm a big fan of Kingsley Enagbare. Has the size, the arm length, and he will get his hands on you first if you're a tackle going against him. So I think he does a lot right. He just focuses and uses the bull almost exclusively. This is one of those guys where if you could teach him to be able to work back inside, or be able to get a little bit more dip, or just add 1 or 2 more pass rush moves on top of a good bull rush, this guy can become a really solid contributor on the perimeter. And, the Giants did go Kingsley Enagbare here at 37. Him and Azeez Ojulari proving, hey, top of the second round, you can still get good edge talent. Then I think at 7, what if this team went Evan Neal, Tyler Linderbaum in that spot? You feel way better about that offensive line. Both tackles, you're feeling good. You got a new center, and you still got an edge rusher at the top of the second round. Just a little preview of what I'm thinking for my next mock. Jets up with the next pick. Leo Chenal. I think this is, another fantastic pick. I did go linebacker Brian Asamoah in my last mock. Had some Jets fans like it, some not. But I also did go with Trey Mcbride, so I think that kind of evened out the crowd a little bit there. But, if they did go Leo Chenal, this is a guy who has the ability to, I'm not going to call him Michael Parsons, but be able to be a blitzing linebacker, but also has plenty of competency to play off ball. So I think that's a fit that makes a ton of sense there. And again, that middle linebacker spot is very key in that Robert Saleh defense and that cover 3, cover 4 mold, zone heavy looks. I think Chenal can be a really solid guy that you can leave in coverage and feel confident about it. Zion Johnson, this is the perfect option here for the Bears. I think if Zion Johnson / Kenyon Green or David Bell is there at 39 for the Bears, you sprint the card in, because one's either an Allen Robinson replacement with Bell or a James Daniel replacement with Green or Zion Johnson, and you got to be able to improve that offensive line, not just replace Daniels, who's potentially leaving this offseason, but you got to do what you can to try to make the best life possible for Justin Fields. And wide receiver, offensive line, I think is the move there at 39. And then the Atlanta Falcons at 40 with Kenny Pickett. This is about as far as I've seen him fall. I think the hands are going to be a concern, especially for, your older heads, if you will. Those scouts who have, these are my measurements. If you don't meet them, you're off the board. That simple. And for the Falcons, that concern might be eased a little bit. Think about what I was talking about with the Saints in my last mock, or even earlier in this video. I'm saying they're playing in a dome. The hand concern's not as much of an issue because half your game, you're not going to face rain, sleet, or snow. And you know what the temperature is going to be at. It's not going to be cold. It's not going to be scorching hot. It's going to be climate controlled. So I kind of like that pick there as well. Now, Pickett, though, is one of those guys who's a little bit more pro-ready. So having him sit behind Matt Ryan feels like you're wasting one of the good years you're going to get right off the bat, and you're then squandering the value of a first-year player on that year or contract one quarterback situation, and a guy who can play right away like a Mac Jones. Like if New England did not play Jones last year, it feels like they wouldn't be maximizing their playoff window with him. And I feel like that's kind of similar with the Falcons. That said, this team has a ton more holes than where the Patriots were at last year, picking 15 in the first round. Then to Marvin Liao for the Packers at 41. I think this would be a really nice pairing. I don't know who the nose would be between Liao and Clark. Clark's done both, so probably Clark. But just to have a nice interior 3-tech next to Kenny Clark, trying to make his life a little bit easier. It's been a position where, because Kenny Clark's so good, they have ignored it, and there's not a whole lot next to Clark. Liao is a worthy investment at the top of round 2. A guy who, the beginning of the process was a top 5, top 10 player on most people's boards. So feels like you're catching a fallen star and a chance to kind of rebound his value. Olavey then to the Seahawks. They're going to keep that 4-3 defense. We'll see. Obviously, change there with Ken Norton not going to be the DC anymore. But if they're going to keep that 4-3 look, Y9 rushers, Olavey, I think this is a stellar pick there at 42, and addresses a huge area of need. Roger McCreary then the next pick up. This is continuing with that Washington and Seattle trade. Russell Wilson going to the Commanders. You go Ebiketie and Roger McCreary. I think it's really solid. Maybe McCreary's not necessarily their guy, right? Shorter arms, shorter build in general, and also just man-heavy at Auburn. Maybe Seattle would opt for more of those, taller, longer arms, zone coverage specialists. Maybe a Kyler Gordon could make sense. Gordon's a little smaller, a little shorter, I should say. I think he still holds his weight in that respect. But, zone-heavy defense in Washington Plus keeps him in state, which, who cares at that point. But I think that might be a little bit better of a fitter. Tariq Woolen could be a worthy project here at 43. Feels a little rich for my blood, but I could see a team falling in love with him and seeing 6'4", long arms play, and it feels fluid in zone coverage. I like that. I can see Seattle, taking a liking to that. Vikings go Boye Mafe. I think that is a really spicy pick. And Boye Mafe is a name that's catching a lot of buzz. Not a great game one against Ohio State, Nicholas Petit-Frere, which, I'll save that tangent for another side, but I think that really speaks to how good Petit-Frere subtly is in this class. But Boye Mafe, after that Ohio State game, consistent, solid production, going to test well, good athlete, needs a little bit more work. But the Vikings have also done, I don't want to say a good job, but think about what they did with Danielle Hunter in the second round. Boye Mafe could be the next iteration of that. Now, it'd be great if you had Hunter stay. We'll see. But if you paired up Mafe with Hunter on the edge, it's a really solid start for Minnesota to try to fix that pass rush. And then Travis Jones to the Cleveland Browns at 45, I think. Really solid addition. You get a true nose run stopper to play alongside some of the guys they've had that are primarily pass rushers in that spot. Also, again, it makes that much easier for Myles Garrett. Like, he needs help, but having a guy that's going to focus and eat up blocks in the run game, maybe a few less hits that Garrett's seen throughout the year, allows him to stay that much healthier, but also, again, just put a linear focus on getting to the quarterback, which Garrett, again, already pretty amazing at. Then Drake Jackson of the Ravens. I think this is a really solid pick, and if you were to tell me that the Baltimore Ravens came away with Sauce Gardner and Drake Jackson, I'd be happy if I was a Ravens fan, right? You addressed, that outside corner position, allows you to potentially move on from Marcus Peters, free up like $10 million in cap space, and then Drake Jackson will be your next worthy edge project. I think Jackson has good burst and uses that speed a lot. Now, again, it's just adding more moves to what his skill set is. USC is a tough program. It has a ton of tradition and high bar put in front of it because we all know the name USC, but it's also a program that's underwhelmed in a lot of respects. And I've been saying the same thing about Florida the last couple of years. It's like, how much of these former 4- and 5-star prospects are they really tapping into? If this team's underwhelming, that means the coaching staff's not fully maximizing what they have, both in the game plan, but also coaching up these players. So it's really interesting to watch Drake Jackson. If he goes to a team, especially like the Ravens, that has a great track record of developing these types of guys, I could see him being one of the best rookies right off the jump, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Then the Dolphins at 47 go Myjai Sanders. I think that it's a worthy move to continue to add to that defensive front. Add an edge rusher opposite of Jalen Phillips. Makes a ton of sense there in my eye, especially with Emmanuel Ogbah potentially leaving this off season. Then the Colts, Carson Strong. I think you're going to see a ton of this, especially with it's seeming pretty likely that it's going to be a trade or cut of Carson Wentz. Strong feels like a guy you can plug in, play right away. He is the best pure passer in this class when it comes to arm strength, accuracy, touch. He's got it all. It's just the leg, the lack of mobility. But also Indianapolis has been able to do pretty well in that department. Carson Wentz can move, but he's not Lamar Jackson by any stretch. And then before that, Phillip Rivers, pretty much a statue. So I think Strong can be a continuation of what Frank Reich's already done a lot with. So I think that makes a ton of sense there. And I think you're going to see a lot of it throughout the rest of the draft season. Chargers go Logan Hall. Not quite the nose that Chargers fans are looking for, but a guy with good defensive lineman versatility, right? This guy could be a 3 or 5 tech, so depending on what they want to do with Bosa, do you want to play him as a stand-up rusher or is that 3-4 D end? A lot of the same could be said about Hall. Hall could also then line up over the center in certain passing situations, right? If you're going, your pass rush sets nickel, 3 DBs or 3 corners on the field and, hand in the dirt Joey Bosa, Logan Hall could be an interior rusher in that spot, or he could be the opposite defensive end rusher. So Hall does give you a lot of versatility there, which is obviously really nice for a team that's still trying to figure out who's going to be where on the defensive side. Sky Moore to the Saints. So New Orleans gets a quarterback. They get a wide receiver. That feels like a solid place for this team to be able to compete. And that's basically what I did in my last mock. It was just Pickett and Dotson. Here in this situation, it's Willis and Moore. And, given that they're going to probably keep their stars around, you find a wide receiver to go opposite of Michael Thomas, you find a quarterback that can play right away, this team might be the best in the NFC South now that Tom Brady's out of Tampa Bay. Eagles go Jaquan Brisker. Brisker, more snaps than not being played inside the box, but he did second most alignment as a deep safety. So I think he does give you the ability to continue to live that life as a split safety type of defense, a lot of too high. The reason I mentioned where he plays is primarily Brisker was in the box. It would be a little bit of a transition to see him more as a deep safety in that cover 2 look, cover 4 defenses as well. So a little bit of adjustment there for Brisker, but he also played really well in zone coverage, graded out really well as a zone coverage defender. So not really worried about it there. Just be a little bit different where we'd see him. Steelers go Kyler Gordon. Seen a whole lot of zone for Pittsburgh, a lot of cover 3 over the last couple of years. I think Mike Tomlin wants to move back to seeing more man, but I think Kyler Gordon, if they do decide to play more zone, a stellar fit for Pittsburgh in a huge position of need. Pats go Lewis Sin. Be interested to see what they do with that safety position. They got a ton out of Adrian Phillips that I didn't anticipate. You have Kyle Duggar, still have Devin McCourty playing well. Sin could be your McCourty replacement long term, and maybe Phillips is getting up there in his age as well, past his 30 age mark, so he could be someone they move on from pretty soon. Raiders go Christian Harris. Could be a nice fit. They definitely need to get linebacker help. I think I'm more set on Harris going to New England as potential Donta Hightower replacement, or to Tennessee as that blitzing inside linebacker that they really never got with Rashaan Evans. But the Raiders took Harris. I would be totally okay with it here in the second round. George Pickens to the Cardinals. Well, this could be fun, right? So if Pickens pans out and becomes the best wide receiver in his draft class, so which, if you were to make these boards 2 years ago, he probably was for a lot of people, has the size, has the downfield speed, has the ability to win at the catch point. There's not a whole lot of weaknesses other than the injury concerns for Pickens. So if it works out, and all plays well, this is your DeAndre Hopkins replacement, but also that trio of Hopkins, Pickens, and Rondale Moore. I mean, no excuses at that point for Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury, assuming that Kyler Murray is, of course, back with Arizona. But I'm intrigued by that. I think there's other positions of need, right? If you go edge, I like corner in round 2, or if it's the other way around, I think that's my focus for Arizona. Easier said than done, though, because you don't know who's going to be on the board at, pick 23 and 55. Then it's Cam Thomas coming off the board to the Dallas Cowboys, potential Randy Gregory replacement or DeMarcus Lawrence replacement if they do decide to trade that contract or just outright cut him. I don't know if you can cut him. I'll have to look at the dead cap hit, but I think Cam Thomas in a 4-3, 4-3. Not a whole lot of base defenses anymore, but 4-man rush, I think he fits in pretty perfectly. And it can be someone who steps in and provides value right away for Cowboys. Then the Bills go Nick Benito. Same can be said. You're just stockpiling talent, and a 4-3 primary defense is your base. Benito, I thought of him at first as a 4-3 fit. I've seen the arguments that a 3-4 outside rusher would be a better fit for him. Maybe he's just scheme versatile. But 4-3, especially on those stunts, he had a lot of success at Oklahoma. And I think he would be able to do that with Buffalo as well. Dylan Parham from Memphis. Interior offensive line love. Don't get to see this name all that often, but for the Falcons makes a ton of sense as a guy who could potentially light a spark under the ass of Jalen Mayfield, lack of a better term, but also could just be someone, if Mayfield doesn't figure it out, steps into that role and starts for you for the Falcons. And then the Bucks, Justin Ross. Not a name you see a whole lot in the second round anymore, but again, if you were making this list 2 years ago, Pickens and Ross are probably your guys. So it's been a little bit of a fall from the top for Justin Ross, but I still like him as a prospect. I mean, huge size. The upside is there. Just going to take the right team to take a chance on him. Hey, playing opposite of Mike Evans could be a nice person to learn from if you're Justin Ross. Then you have Chad Muma to the Packers. So doubling down here on linebacker, a little interesting of an approach there. I don't know if I would do that if I were the Packers, but they also went IDL earlier in this draft, and I think that is a worthy move, so we'll see. Then the 49ers get good value here in Darian Kennard. They do need IOL. Aaron Banks hasn't worked out yet. I wasn't really in love with that fit in a zone running scheme, a guy that I felt like was more of a power run scheme, power blocking scheme, but Kennard could be that potential, when we missed on Banks, so Kennard's going to be the guy long term, and then they can eventually move on from Banks. So I like that pick there, and also just in general, even if it's not that, a potential Lincoln Tomlinson replacement as well. And the Chiefs go Jalen Tolbert. Love this fit. Love Jalen Tolbert to the Chiefs in the second round. One of my favorite picks that I've been drawing up in my mock. If not him, Christian Watkins as well from North Dakota State. Same type of guys, just different heights. Tolbert, though, a little bit smaller than what he was originally listed at South Alabama. Not 6'3", probably 6'5", 6'1", but wins at the catch point and just gives you a different receiving option and a guy who wins it a different way compared to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Love that third weapon in store for Kansas City. And then Cincinnati, you get Jamari Saylor. That's your interior offensive lineman after going tackle in round 1. Patching up the offensive line is going to be the focus for sure for Cincinnati. And then the final pick, Green Bay, goes Trey McBride. This is the pick coming from Denver in that Aaron Rodgers trade. Tight end could be certainly a big area of need. I'm a little surprised that, instead, Trey McBride was the guy I was thinking of. Had a big Senior Bowl and definitely came out as the winner. Isaiah Likely, I think, will have his fans, but McBride, I think, is tight end 1 for right now. But that's going to do it for my reaction to Austin Gayle's latest 2022 2-round mock draft. Tell me what you thought down in the comment section. Do you think he has players falling too far? Do you think he has some names going too early? Love to have your thoughts down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me and my channel out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more football and draft content, just hit that big red subscribe button, and it is coming your way over the next couple of months. But that's going to do it for me. Hope you all had a fantastic rest of your day. Till next time, my name is Teej, and I am signing off.